My name is Lydia. I'm 21 years old. I met my boyfriend, Steven, when I was 19 and he was 24. He was working a stable, well-paying job, so when he promised he'd married me eventually, I believed him and dropped out of college. This year, we finally got engaged. Wedding planning was a pain, but I loved him. There was so much to do, and Steven let me handle all of it. If only my sister, Hannah, wouldn't act as if the wedding was hers. We did all our planning at the wedding venue, a property that Steven's parents owned.
The flowers should be white. First weddings are pure and special. You should embrace it. White flowers.
I'm not into all the purity and innocent symbolism. Steven and I have already had sex, and besides, pink is my favorite color. The flowers should be pink.
But if you don't do white, then everyone is going to assume you're a whore. My choice is better.
Maybe Hannah was just upset that at her wedding to her husband, Brian, she couldn't have claimed innocence since she was 8 months pregnant at the altar. Her wedding was a year ago, and they only got married because she was pregnant and needed someone to support her and the kid. Hannah was already pregnant again with their second child, even though the first was barely a year old. We're doing pink flowers. Don't you have someone else to go bother? I'll warn them that Hannah with the huge belly is coming and they should hide.
You don't have to be such a bitch. It's just a baby. I'm surprised Steven hasn't gotten you pregnant yet.
Hannah loved to make accusations about my sex life with Steven. I just wanted to wait until we got married to have kids, and Steven respected that. At the end of the day, Brian arrived to pick up Hannah. Their baby was asleep in a stroller, and after the argument I'd had with Hannah about pregnancy, I wondered about having kids with Steven. I thought about it all afternoon and decided to tell Steven about it that night. Steven, Hannah and I were talking, and I wanted to ask you about kids. We were both sitting down to eat a dinner that I'd made. Steven supported me so I didn't have to get a job, but our deal was that I took care of our home and cooked and cleaned. I enjoyed having the time to work on my baking hobby. However, my choice of conversation topic shocked Steven, and he choked on his drink.
What about children exactly?
You've always wanted lots of kids, and I know I wanted to wait, but the wedding is soon. Maybe we should get started now. And if it takes a while, maybe we won't have to wait so long.
It won't take long. Look at how fast your sister got knocked up with her second one.
Except I'm not my sister, and you're not Brian. It could take longer.
If you're sure, yes.
For the months leading up to the wedding, Steven was enthusiastic about trying to get me pregnant. Planning the wedding was still stressful, but Steven being so excited made me feel better. It didn't solve my fighting with Hannah, though.
The cake should be vanilla because other flavors aren't traditional for a wedding.
We're doing chocolate with white icing. I hate vanilla cake.
My kid only eats vanilla, so unless you want him to throw a tantrum all night.
Just the idea of eating vanilla cake made me want to vomit. I didn't point out that a baby's preferences on cake flavor didn't matter to me. I covered my mouth and ran for the bathroom when another wave of nausea hit me. I made it to the bathroom with seconds to spare and thankfully vomited into the toilet instead of all over the floor.
Are you okay? Do you have food poisoning or something?
I felt too miserable to speak. This couldn't be food poisoning. I cooked all my food myself and followed proper safety measures because I didn't want to get sick while Steven and I were trying for a baby. Could you do me a huge favor and get a pregnancy test?
Oh, I thought you were too pure to get pregnant before the wedding.
Don't be a bitch right now. Can you get a test, please? Hannah did as I asked, and then waited outside the bathroom while I took the pregnancy test. I waited the required time before looking at the results. I was pregnant. I couldn't wait to tell everyone. Steven and I are going to have a baby. Hannah didn't seem as thrilled as I did, but she was pregnant with her second kid, so maybe the magic was lost on her. That night, I told Steven at one of our favorite restaurants. I wanted to surprise him, so instead of cooking dinner, I made dinner reservations. We rarely came to this restaurant. Steven claimed it was because he liked my cooking better.
Can I start you and Lydia off with any drinks, sir?
That was strange. I could have sworn the waiter almost called me Hannah. It seemed to annoy Steven too because he glared and then opened his mouth to order us a bottle of wine, but I stopped him. Actually, I'll just have water tonight. We're expecting.
Seriously? That's amazing.
The waiter excused himself to give a moment, but came back later with 2 waters once the excitement had worn off. Dinner was good that night. That same night, while Steven was in the shower, his phone indicated of a few incoming messages. When I grabbed the phone to go bring it to him, the screen lit up automatically, and I saw parts of the messages in the notifications. Hannah was texting him.
Make sure this kid doesn't distract you from your other priorities.
That was sweet of Hannah to try and protect me like that. She had to be reminding Steven that he still had to take care of me, and that the wedding still had to happen, right? I wondered what prompted the conversation. If maybe Steven was being sweet and asking Hannah about ways to make me feel more comfortable now that I was pregnant. I didn't want it to seem like I was snooping, so I just put his phone back down and forget about it. Then, the day of the wedding arrived. I was all sorts of nervous, but my morning sickness was under control and my baby bump was just barely showing. The ceremony part was as boring as I expected. I'd spent months planning this wedding and it didn't feel as exciting as I wanted it to be, especially since Hannah had talked her way into getting white flowers and a vanilla cake. The reception was the best part, even if I couldn't get drunk because of the pregnancy. I danced with my dad and Steven and some of my friends until it was time for speeches. Brian was Steven's best man, and he'd do the first speech. They'd bonded quickly the first time Hannah and I had brought them both to a family holiday party and had been inseparable since. I was a little nervous since Brian seemed more than a little wasted, but I trusted he could make it through the speech without vomiting or passing out.
Steven's been the best friend a guy could ever ask for. When I was having trouble getting my girlfriend pregnant, you stepped in and made it happen. And now, because of you, I've got an amazing wife and 2 kids I get to call my own.
There was a moment of silence and then outrage when people figured out what Brian meant. I was still shocked. Surely he couldn't mean that Hannah's children were actually Steven's. Even Steven looked panicked, like he didn't understand. But then he chugged down his glass of champagne and stood up with a confident demeanor. I couldn't have expected his next words.
I couldn't be more blessed than to have 1 sweet child and 2 more on the way. I've always wanted to be a dad, and it certainly doesn't hurt that Hannah and Lydia are 2 beautiful sisters, right?
Steven, what the hell is going on? What are you saying?
My goal in life was always to have as many kids as I could, and Lydia is my perfect housewife. But Hannah wanted kids first, and Brian couldn't do it.
Wait, you're cheating on me?
He's been cheating on you for years, Lydia. Don't be so naive. As much as I love Brian because he takes care of the kids, Steven can actually knock me up.
My parents were horrified. Steven's parents didn't even look shocked. They seemed proud. I stormed out and my parents followed. A month after the wedding, the morning sickness became manageable. I was living with my parents, and Steven refused to sign any divorce or child custody papers. Steven wanted me to be a pregnant wife for him. I had to do something. So, I made an appointment to speak with Steven's boss, Monica. Monica had been cheated on by a partner before, so I was certain she'd take my side in this. I know that you don't know me very well, but I know that you've been through the very same thing that I have. Steven cheated on me with my sister, and all because he has some weird pregnancy fetish.
That is very shocking, and I'm sorry to hear that, but...
Please, Monica. I know it's asking a lot, but could you please help me get even with him? I have full intentions of going after him in the courts, but only you can make him pay here at his job. For crying out loud, Monica, he hid it until after we'd been married. His parents and my sister knew the whole time. I can't stay with him. A week passed and then Steven called me.
My boss fired me. What did you do? I've had this job for years, Lydia.
Next time you shouldn't cheat on your wife if you work for someone that hates cheaters.
Screw you.
It was a good start, but considering how horrific what Steven and Hannah had done to me, I knew that I needed to do a lot more to make him suffer. And so I filed for divorce as well as sole custody of our child. Thankfully, I had managed to gather enough evidence that Steven had fathered 2 children with Hannah, and that combined with the atrocious way that he had no remorse for what he had done only gave me more credibility. The judge took a look at all of the evidence and was thoroughly disgusted by Steven's actions, and not only awarded me sole custody of my child, but also granted me our house and over $50,000 in alimony and another $25,000 in child support. The money, of course, didn't erase the stain and the shame of what Steven had done to me, but it helped to make sure that at least some of the financial worries were taken care of. As for Steven, without a job and heavily in debt, he ended up moving in with Hannah and Brian, although that didn't last very long. Eventually, Brian got sick of playing second fiddle to Steven, and when Steven got Hannah pregnant for the 3rd time, he had had enough and Brian divorced her and left her with the children since none of them were even his. Not long afterwards, even Steven left her so that he could pursue other women to have children for him, leaving Hannah also in debt and barely struggling to keep food on the table. Steven's plans to father as many children as possible ended, though when he slept with the wrong woman, and ended contracting a sexually transmitted disease that left him infertile. I've heard that he is now penniless, miserable, and living on the streets. and often fantasizes about one day still having more children despite the fact that he can't anymore. As for me, well, the money did help, but I knew that it would run out, and so I ended up getting a job, and it was there that I met Joshua. He is everything that I had wished that Stephen could have been. He is a loving and caring husband and father, and I know that I can have absolute faith and trust in him. Together, we have created a wonderful and happy family, and I can't wait to see what the future holds for us. Please subscribe.